Okay, first of all, I would like to say all praises be to the Most High. I'm waiting till you all settle down, and then we can go into the class real quick. You don't got to rush it too quick, but just trying to get through it real quick. This is really a preparation for the feast tomorrow night. Okay. All right. First of all, I would like to say all praises be to the Most High and thank everyone for coming this evening. And what we're going to do is break down and resolve, according to scriptures, the Passover and the Feast of Unleavened Bread. Number one, in past time, when we first began to understand we were Hebrews, we were dealing with strictly calculating through the times according to the moon, right? So from sundown to sundown, we knew that sundown started a new day, and we was dealing with the moons. We realized, according to the scriptures, that you can't calculate the months through the moon because the moon comes in 10 days short every year. So obviously, it's the sun and the moon together in which you can calculate the full 364 days, all right? 52 Sabbaths. Now, after equal parts night and day, coming out of the winter, that's signifying a new schedule for the year. It's an appointed time, or what the scriptures call new moon, but it really means new month, bringing in the springtime, which is a Sabbath. All right? You count 14 days from that, and you have 14 days from that, and that gives us what? The Passover. It's on the 14th day. Let's get that real quick in Leviticus 23. So now we know that the Passover falls on a Sabbath every year, right? The first day of the year is usually when the new year comes in, it comes in on the first day of the year, and it ends on a Sabbath, all right? So you count 14 days and we have a Sabbath, right? Let's read Leviticus on the Passover, what it tells us.
Con, this is the book of Leviticus, chapter 23, verse 1.
Yes.
And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel, and say unto them, concerning the feast of the Most High.
Concerning the feast of the Most High.
Which ye shall proclaim to be holy convocations. Even these are my feasts.
Even these are my feasts. Read.
Verse 3. 6 days shall work be done, but the seventh day is the Sabbath of rest. In holy convocation ye shall do no work therein.
So here it is. That's the first holy day, which is from Sabbath to Sabbath. Go on.
It is the Sabbath of the Lord in all your dwellings.
Go ahead.
These are the feasts of the Lord, even holy convocations, which ye shall proclaim in their seasons.
Which is holy gatherings. Go on.
In the 14th day of the first month at even.
Now it says holy convocations in their season. So the first season is what we call spring. Right? Read.
In the 14th day of the first month at even.
Which is Friday, sundown. Read.
Is the Lord's Passover.
Is the Lord's Passover. Right? So we know when Friday sundown happened, it begins the Passover. All right? Now what was bringing in the confusion is when it says Friday or the Sabbath at even. But there's two evenings for Friday. There's the Friday when it comes in from Thursday into Friday, and it's the evening when the sun is going down at the end of Friday, which is Saturday sundown. Right before it goes into a new day, it's still an evening. Y'all got that? Y'all understand that? So you got the first evening when it comes down. That was the night that Christ, with the disciples, that night had his feast, or had his lamb, actually a day before the actual feast that was in scriptures. Why? Because Christ had to fulfill himself being the Passover lamb. He couldn't be in two places at one time. He couldn't have the last feast with the disciples and be the sacrificed lamb at the appointed time according to Moses. So he had his feast that night, which was the Holy Communion. And that's what we're doing now. Do y'all got it? Y'all understand that? Huh?
I think so.
Okay, what don't you understand?
What time period is even? Is it 2 to 6? Is that
Oh, okay. You don't look at the time according to how you look at a clock, okay? Because what we're dealing with is sundown, okay? When sundown actually begins, it's still, just say hypothetically, we're looking at Thursday, we're looking at Friday, you understand? Just look at that as our example right now, right? When Thursday's sun is going down, you're still into the late part of what you would call Thursday. It's not until the sun go all the way down that we're into the new day, which is what we would call Friday. You understand? So it have nothing to do with how you look on your clock. It have everything to do with looking outside and seeing when there's no light and the sun is all the way down. You're in the beginning of the new day. You understand? That's an evening, right? And then you have at the end of it, right before you go into what we call Saturday, that's an evening too. You understand? Right before you go into Saturday, that's an evening. So what you have is you have the beginning evening that begins the day, and you have another evening going into what? Saturday. Saturday night going into Saturday to Sunday. So you have two night times which you can see with your own eyes within each day. You got the going down of the sun on Thursday, going into the evening on Friday. That's the beginning evening. Then you have at the very end, you understand, another sun going down. Right before that is when Christ was crucified. When he gave up the ghost, right before that. So he was actually sacrificed the same time the lamb was sacrificed in the Old Testament that went on the doors. You understand? He had to fulfill that according to the law. Every part of Christ's life, even him dying, had to be right on the same hour that the lamb was sacrificed during the time of Moses. So if he was the sacrifice, then you know the sacrifice that he got for him and the disciples wasn't the same exact according to the Old Testament. You understand? When he went and told them to go get the lamb, that was for them knowing that he had to be the physical sacrifice, fulfilling what was written in Moses' time. You understand that? So he had his private feast, and then when he was sacrificed, that was the regular feast. You understand? So the church always used that as a marker for communion the night that Christ was with the disciples. And that's what we're doing here. But the actual feast happened, or the sacrifice actually happened, when the sun was nearly going down to make preparation for the feast. And see, the error that people have been making, looking at the moon and all that, how long is the Feast of Unleavened Bread? 7 days according to scriptures. But going by the moon and dealing with that when the sun go down, people and others who had no knowledge at one time was actually having how many days of Feast of Unleavened Bread? 8. They was including the Passover with the 7-day Feast of Unleavened Bread. When really the Passover is in connection with the Feast of Unleavened Bread, because it starts at the end. You understand? So when the sun go down at the very end of that Sabbath, you understand, when Christ was crucified, was the day going out, the Passover day going out, the sacrifice happening, and the Feast of Unleavened Bread coming in. You got it? Everyone can understand. Finish reading what you have in Leviticus.
Leviticus
23.
Leviticus chapter 23, Salakia.
Go ahead.
Leviticus 23, verse 5.
Go ahead.
In the 14th day of the first month at even is the Lord's Passover. And on the 15th day of the same month is the Feast of Unleavened Bread.
Is the Feast of Unleavened Bread. You understand? Now, when you read it there, it would make you believe, when you look at it initially, that it's speaking of a separate 24-hour period. But it's not that way, because it's talking about the Passover beginning where? At the end of the 14th day, at that evening. And then the feast, the preparation of the lamb is being prepared. Once Christ was taken down off the cross, the preparation is happening for when that night comes, they're in what? The Feast of Unleavened Bread. Y'all understand that?
Come.
So now they're in the Feast of Unleavened Bread. What happens? The next day, Sunday, if you go back to when we were in Egypt, we was up out of there in haste right after that. So Sunday, we jetted out in the Old Testament. You understand? So that's how it happened. It was the Feast of Unleavened Bread going into what you would call Sunday morning, that we were looking to get up out of there. Between Sunday morning and Monday morning, we was leaving in haste with no leaven. Exactly. So as you can see, everything in the New Testament parallels the Old Testament. So if you want to know how it actually happened, you look at Moses and what happened with them putting the lamb, the blood on the door and all that, and you look at that same time period and parallel that with when Christ dealt with this sacrifice, not when he told the disciples to go get a lamb. You understand? Because Christ is the lamb. You all follow me here?
Come.
So the mistake people will make is they'll see that Christ went and got a lamb, but he got the lamb a day early, knowing that he had to be the sacrifice fulfilled under Moses' law. That was the accountability. He had to do it exactly how it was done under Moses. He had to be that sacrifice. Right? Finish reading.
This is verse 6.
Go ahead.
And on the 15th day of the same month is the Feast of Unleavened Bread
Go
unto
ahead.
the Lord. 7 days ye must eat unleavened bread.
7 days you must eat unleavened bread. Read.
And the first day ye shall have an holy convocation.
And the first day is a holy convocation. Why? Because right after the Passover was sacrificed, the Feast of Unleavened Bread come in. And that's why we're doing our feast. Soon as the sun go down tomorrow, that was the sacrifice going into what? The end of the Passover into what? The Feast of Unleavened Bread. So it's all connected. It's connected one after the other. At the end, at that evening, is the Passover. That's that last evening before it's going into what? The Feast of Unleavened Bread. It's connected. And it's a 7-day period from that point. You got it? So it's 7 days. It's not a complete 8 days. If we were to look at just the 14th day, is Friday night, and start there, that would make it 8 days of unleavened bread when the Bible tells us it's 7. We all see that, right?
Come.
So technically, the night before, because don't forget, what is the reason the Most High told us to use the unleavened bread? When we left Egypt, we left in haste and we forgot to get leaven. There was a lack of leaven, so small an amount that we were cooking bread in the wilderness unleavened. You see that? It's a small ration. It wasn't enough to go around, right? So now, when we look at this, technically, on the night before, when Moses had the lamb there, we were still in Egypt, right? So we didn't leave Egypt that night in haste, so we still had leaven, right? So technically, the leaven didn't start until the next day, technically. Right? But Christ tells us in the New Testament that he become, it says put out the leaven so that we can be a new lump to Christ. And that's why we include it tonight, because he said put it out. But technically, the unleavened didn't begin until after we left. See? Are you following me? So we just break it down each piece so you'll understand why we do what we do according to scriptures. So when the disciples afterwards got together with their communion, that Passover communion, in remembrance of Christ at that table like we're doing tonight, they made sure there was no leaven. Okay, so that we can be a new lump for Christ going into the Feast of Unleavened Bread. Are you following it here? That's clear. Okay. Go ahead, read it.
Verse 7. And the first day ye shall have an holy convocation, ye shall do no servile work therein.
You shall do no servile work. So if you're not to do any servile work in that first day of unleavened bread, what is that day? It's a Sabbath. And that's why in the New Testament it says that we must take him down. Christ was on the cross, and it says take him down before the Sabbath. Why? Because the Feast of Unleavened Bread after the Passover is considered a what? A Sabbath. So when you may see it in the New Testament, it says take them down before the Sabbath, you might think it's the regular Sabbath cycle from the 7 days to 7 days and think that it's talking about taking them down before Friday comes in, before Friday night comes in. But it's not speaking of that, because the Feast of Unleavened Bread in scriptures, which is a day after the Passover, the Most High said, do no servile work, which means it's a what? A Sabbath. So that's the Sabbath it's speaking of. The Sabbath of the Feast of Unleavened Bread written of in Leviticus 23. Can you all see that? Okay, finish.
Verse 8. But ye shall offer an offering made by fire unto the Lord 7 days. And the 7th day is an holy convocation. Ye shall do no servile work therein.
Okay. And that's crystal clear. All right. Now, how do we know when Christ got the lamb that wasn't the lamb at the appointed time according to Moses? How do we know that? Because Christ had to fulfill every part of the law. You understand? Him killing that lamb the day before is not him fulfilling the law of himself being the sacrifice when that lamb was killed during the time of Moses. Are you following? Is that clear? Right? Let's get it to show you that according to the scriptures, Christ had to fulfill every part.
This is Matthew chapter 5, verse 7.
Yes.
Let's look at Matthew chapter 5 and 17.
Go ahead.
Think not that I am come to destroy the law.
So Yeshua says, think not that I've come to destroy the law. Read.
Or the prophets. I am not come to destroy, but to fulfill.
So Christ did not come to destroy what was written in the law, but to fulfill every part of it. Read it.
For verily I say unto you, till heaven and earth pass, one jot or one tittle shall in no wise pass from the law.
When Christ was speaking of no jot or no tittle shall pass from the law, he was speaking of himself fulfilling what was written. Not even a small portion will be different than what was written in the Old Testament. Every piece will be exactly the same according to his fulfillment, even to the sacrifice. Every piece will be the same. No jot or tittle is speaking of himself in the law. Read.
Till all be fulfilled.
And when he was speaking of till all be fulfilled, he was speaking of all what he had to fulfill. Right? Let's go to Luke 24 and let's get a little more on that.
Before that, I just want to read one real quick.
Go ahead.
St. John chapter 3, verse 13 through 15.
Go ahead.
Then cometh Yeshua from Galilee to Jordan unto John to be baptized of him. But John forbade him, saying, I have need to be baptized of thee, and comest thou to me? And Yeshua answering said unto him, Suffer it to be so now, for thus it becometh us to fulfill all righteousness.
It's becoming to us, speaking of him and John, to fulfill what?
All righteousness.
All righteousness, what was written in the Old Testament. So Christ was a living fulfillment. So even to his sacrifice, when he actually gave up the ghost, that was the same time the Passover lamb was killed in the Old Testament. And they used that lamb as preparation for what? That night when they ate, when the blood was on all the doors. So that night was what? That night was Saturday night when the blood was on all the doors. Y'all see that? Y'all sure y'all see that?
You mind repeating that last bit?
Excuse me. The blood, when they killed the sacrifice and they drained the blood, they put the blood at the end of the Sabbath on all the doors. The Sabbath wasn't done yet. Right before the end, that blood was draining out, and they took the blood and put it on all the doors. What? That Sabbath night. Are you following me here? You got Friday night evening, and you got Saturday evening. Right? The sun is not fully come down on Saturday night. It's still at the evening or the end of the Sabbath. You got that? So they take that blood and put it on all the doors. Right? And then after the blood is drained, they ate the sacrifice that night. So the Passover went on that night. As far as, are you following me? The death angel came midnight that night. Or you got it?
They killed it before.
They killed it before the sun went down, before it was totally dark.
Right.
Do you got it?
Yes.
That was the blood. You understand? So Christ had to fulfill that with his own body, the same exact time. So when Christ killed one the day before, that was for the disciples in the church to commune so that he could fulfill the Old Testament himself. Do you got it?
Yes, yes.
You sure? Okay. Read on.
This is chapter 24, verse 25.
Read.
Then he said unto them, O fools and slow of heart, to believe all that the prophets have spoken. Ought not Christ to have suffered these things and entered into his glory?
Go ahead.
And beginning at Moses and all the prophets,
And beginning at Moses and all the prophets,
he expounded unto them in all the scriptures the things concerning himself.
he started going through all the scriptures, the things concerning himself. And him being sacrificed and being that sacrificial lamb was part of what he had to fulfill according to the letter. He had to fulfill it exactly how it was done during the time of Moses. Are you following me here? Okay. Now, let's go to Matthew 26 real quick. Okay. Now, as you know, when you read the Old Testament, if we went over that, we're going to go into it more in depth tomorrow night. You had that Saturday night, and that next morning, the Israelites was out of there. You understand? We were gone. We started leaving that next morning, which would be what? Sunday morning. That's when Pharaoh said, get up out of here. I'm going to allow y'all to leave. And we jetted out. That was Sunday morning getting out of Egypt. You got it? So now the Passover has passed. The Feast of Unleavened Bread has passed. And now we out that next morning. Right? You got it? During the time before the sun go down, Sunday. So we're still in what? The Feast of Unleavened Bread when we left out in haste without leaven. Do you have it?
Yes, yes, yes.
Is that clear? So before the sun went down, Sunday, we was out of there and we left in haste. Before Sunday night went down, we were gone. Sunday morning, we're still within the Feast of Unleavened Bread. The death angel done came. We're out that morning. It's still Sunday morning. We're jetting out, and we're still within the Feast of Unleavened Bread until the sun go down. And then there was that journey to get out of Egypt, and that's why we got that 7 days unleavened. You got it? So everything is a fulfillment of how it happened in the Old Testament. And that's why we keep it 7 days. It's speaking of our journey going out in haste without leaven. Crystal clear. Right? Go ahead.
Matthew 26 and 1.
Read.
And it came to pass when Yeshua had finished all these sayings, he said unto his disciples, Ye know that after 2 days is the feast of the Passover, and the Son of Man is betrayed to be crucified. Then assembled together the chief priests and the scribes and the elders of the people unto the palace of the high priest, who was called Caiaphas, and consulted that they might take Yeshua by subtlety and kill him. But they said, not on the feast day, lest there be an uproar among the people. And when Yeshua was in Bethany in the house of Simon the leper, then came unto him a woman having an alabaster box of very precious ointment, and poured it on his head, and he sat at meat. And when his disciples saw it, they had indignation, saying, to what purpose is this waste? For this ointment might have been sold for much and given to the poor.
Now there's something key there when they said that they had to take him, right? Mm-hmm. Read that again.
Verse 3, then assembled together the chief priests and the scribes and the elders of the people.
Here's the Pharisees, scribes, and they coming together saying what?
Unto the palace of the high priest, who was called Caiaphas, and consulted that they might take Yeshua by subtlety and kill him. They're going to take him
by subtlety and kill him. Read.
But they said, not on the feast day.
Say it again.
Not on the feast day.
See that? So when they took him, they knew that that night wasn't the what? The feast day, according to how he was dealing with it in the Old Testament. That was Christ's feast with the disciples the night they took him. Do you see that? Is that crystal clear? So the night they took him wasn't what? It wasn't the feast day. Because the Passover starts at the end of it. At the end of it. That's the evening it's speaking of in Scripture. Not when it comes in on Friday night. It's speaking of the end evening, not the beginning evening, to make preparation for the feast. Do y'all have it? So it's still within that 24-hour period, if you want to put it that way, so we can understand it. But instead of it being in the beginning of it, it begins at the end when Christ died, before the sun actually go all the way down. Then it goes into the Feast of Unleavened Bread. You got it? Is that crystal clear? So we're looking at that whole 24 hours and believing that it starts at the beginning of it, but really it starts at the end of it, going into Saturday. And that's why we're having our feast at the same time. At the end of it, going into Saturday night. You got it? Because Christ was beat and all that. That happened Saturday morning. All that happened Saturday morning into that day when he dragged the cross and all that. So he had to deal with it from the time they got him that night. He had to deal with his persecution from that time till his crucifixion near the sundown the next day. Right? And when it says our Passover has been sacrificed for us, we have to look at that as the time period of the Passover. You got it?
Come.
Read.
This is verse 8.
Come on.
But when his disciples saw it, they had indignation, saying, to what purpose is this waste? For this ointment might have been sold for much and given to the poor. When Yeshua understood it, he said unto them, why trouble ye the woman? For she hath wrought a good work upon me. For ye have the poor always with you, but me ye have not always.
Okay, go ahead.
For in that she hath poured this ointment on my body, she did it for my burial. Verily I say unto you, wheresoever this gospel shall be preached in the whole world, there shall also this, that this woman hath done, be told for a memorial of her.
And that's why each year we speak of this particular event as a memorial to the sister the Most High sent to prepare Christ for his burial. Right? Read.
14. Then one of the disciples called Judas Iscariot went unto the chief priests and said unto him, what wilt thou give me, and I will deliver him unto you?
At that time, Judas agreed to betray Christ. Read.
And they covenanted with him for 30 pieces of silver. And from that time he sought opportunity to betray him. Now the first day of the Feast of Unleavened Bread, the disciples came to Yeshua, saying unto him, where wilt thou that we prepare for to eat, or prepare for thee to eat the Passover? And he said, go into the city to such a man, and say unto him, the master saith, my time is at hand. I will keep the Passover at thy house with my disciples.
So Christ kept the Passover at his house with his disciples. That was their Passover. Why? Because Christ had to fulfill the actual Old Testament Passover with his own death. Is that crystal clear? Now, it's still within that 24-hour period. It's still on the 14th day. But Christ is keeping it early because why? He must fulfill how it was done during the time of Moses. It's still within the Passover 24-hour period, but Christ did it when the sun went down Friday night, knowing that he would have to be the sacrifice fulfilled in the Old Testament the next day. Do you all see that? So you got two separate sacrifices here. You got the first sacrifice so that he can have the Last Supper or the first communion with the disciples. And you have himself being the sacrifice of fulfillment of the law. So that's why we're having the communion tonight, and we're going to have the regular feast with Christ being the sacrifice tomorrow, beginning when before the sun go all the way down tomorrow. See? Is it clear? All right. Go ahead.
And he said, go into such a city, or go into to the city, to such a man, and say unto him, the master saith, my time is at hand. I will keep my Passover at thy house with my disciples.
Now, let me give you another example real quick. Just say if Christ did his sacrifice, he went and told the disciples to do it on the appointed time of the Old Testament, right? Just say he told them to go do that so that he can have the Passover at what you would call the correct time during the time of Moses. And Christ gets sacrificed the next day. Would he be a fulfillment of the sacrifice of the Old Testament? That's common sense. He wouldn't be a fulfillment of what happened in the Old Testament. So what is he doing? What is he fulfilling, dying a day off course? Thank you. So you have two separate scenarios here. You got the regular Passover that he did with his own sacrifice, with his blood. You understand? And you had what you would call a pre-feast within that 24 hours so that he can have it with his disciples and prepare them for the mission. Okay? So you have two separate things going down in a 24-hour period. One in the beginning and one near the end.
Fine. I'm going to read this real quick.
Yes.
Luke 22:13-15. And they went and found as he had said unto them, and they made ready the Passover. And when the hour was come, he sat down, and the 12 apostles with him. And he said unto them, with desire I have desired to eat this Passover with you before I suffer.
Before I suffer. It's in Scripture. Read chapter and verse again.
Luke 22:15. It says, with desire have I desired to eat this Passover with you.
I desire to eat this Passover with you.
Before I suffer.
Before he suffered. His suffering is the killing according to the Old Testament. Okay, so this is actually resolving the full understanding of it. The beginning of it when he did it with his disciples, and him fulfilling it himself with his own death. It's covering both within that 24-hour period. Right? Y'all got it? So it's still within the Passover time from Friday sundown to Saturday sundown. You got it? Okay. Now, finish reading Matthew 26, please.
Verse 20. Now, when the even was come, he sat down with the 12. And as they did eat, he said, verily I say unto you, that one of you shall betray me. And they were exceeding sorrowful, and began every one of them to say unto him, Lord, is it I? And he answered and said, he that dippeth his hand with me in this dish, the same shall betray me.
Why did Judas want to betray Christ? What was his issue?
treasure.
Huh?
He had a problem with the treasure. As far as Christ, the ornament.
Yeah, because it could have made money.
And he was stealing the money.
Yeah, and he wanted to steal the money. He wanted the money for his own acquaintance. Okay? So he tried to make the disciples seem like it was for the poor when he wanted to come up off of that money. To prove that, he went and got 30 pieces to make up for what he would have received if he would have sold the oil. You understand? So he was a thief. And he made the disciples and others, and see that coup against Christ is because this is what he was telling the people. He was telling the people, here it is, he's telling us we're here for the poor. But look how much money the poor could have made off of this. Look how many people we could have fed off of this. Not telling people his true intentions. And that's what happens when you have bitterness in your heart against someone. You always say you're part of it to make it seem like, okay, I don't really, I'm not going to say that I got a problem. And I'm putting that out there because that's the spirit that Judas had in it. That happens. And usually when you hear something from a person, you rarely hear they part in it. Do you?
Share about the other person.
Yeah, because they know that if they pose it a certain type of way, it'll make them look innocent, and it'll make the other person look what? Look guilty. When really he didn't say his intentions in his heart for that. He just said what he knew people would agree with. That's the spirit of Judas. And I notice when so many people try to speak and go against someone, they always bring a part and say something that they know everyone would agree with because it's right. But they never say what their true intentions are. Or they would be corrected by that person. But they'll always say, well, this is what Christ would do, and these people are not doing that. You understand? Trying to be the accuser. And that's why you have to always look at people who are always accusing. That's the spirit of Judas. They're always accusing someone of something, as if they're innocent. So I'm putting this out there to show many examples of how people can be walking, any of us at any time can be susceptible to the spirit of Judas and don't even realize it. Accusing others of things. And then when the conversation comes up, you don't bring your intentions in it. You only talk about what you can point at that somebody else is doing wrong. That's the spirit of Judas. Because here it is. Who looked like the good guy in all this originally? Judas. Hey, Christ, we can give this to the poor. And Christ was like, man, you'll always have the poor with you. I'm being prepared to die for you. The Most High will bless you with more for the poor. He said, I'm not going to be with you. I'm being prepared to die. But who's looked like the good guy amongst the people? And see, Judas was in that position. Why? Judas was actually the greatest betrayer because he was one of the closest to Christ. And one of the most respected with Christ, dealing with Christ's treasury and dealing with all types of good business that was needed amongst the work. So when he spoke, people listened. So here it is. We got a scenario here where this betrayer is now coming off as if he's the good guy and saying it should be for the poor. But then a few hours later, he's with the enemy looking to give up Christ for 30 pieces. And they ask, well, Christ, who is it? Who is it? What person is it? And he says, when I put my hand in a dish, the one that will put his hand in the dish with me is it. And you notice, Christ didn't call him out. Christ didn't say, you deceiver, you liar, I know what you did. Christ didn't accuse him. Christ was still going to die for him. Christ didn't show no hatred for him. Christ broke bread with him that night, knowing what was in his heart. Right? Read.
24. The Son of Man goeth, as it is written of him. But woe unto that man by whom the Son of Man is betrayed. It had been good for that man if he had not been born.
That's deep.
Then Judas, which betrayed him, answered and said, Master, is it I?
Is it I?
He said unto him, Thou hast said.
Yes, you have said it. I didn't say it. Read.
26. And as they were eating, Yeshua took bread and blessed it and brake it and gave it to the disciples and said, Take, eat. This is my body.
This is our bread. Hey, Zoe, where's your bread?
27. And he took the cup.
Go.
And he took the cup and gave thanks, and gave it to them, saying, Drink ye all of it, for this is my blood of the New Testament, which is shed for many for the remission of sins.
Go ahead.
For this is my blood of the New Testament, which is shed for many for the remission of sins. But I say unto you, I will not drink henceforth of the fruit of the vine, until that day when I drink it new with you in my Father's kingdom.
He said, this is my last drink of wine. This is my last communion with you, brothers, until we're sitting together in my kingdom. Read.
30. And when they had sung an hymn, they went out into the Mount of Olives. Then said Yeshua unto them, All ye shall be offended because of me this night. For it is written, I will smite the shepherd, and the sheep of the flock shall be gathered abroad.
Shall be scattered, right?
Or scattered abroad. So
Go ahead.
But after I am risen again, I will go before you into Galilee. Peter answered and said unto him, Though all men shall be offended because of thee, yet will I never be offended. Yeshua saith unto him, Verily I say unto thee, that this night before the cock crow, thou shalt deny me thrice.
He had to deny him 3 times. If he wouldn't have, they would have crucified him too. Read. So he said, listen, you're going to deny me. You're going to have to. Right? Read.
35. Peter saith unto him, Though I should die with thee, yet will I not deny thee.
Now, why couldn't Peter die with Christ?
They have a mission to do.
Because Christ anointed him and says, on this rock will I build my church. He had to have someone who would bring forth the Spirit of the Most High and lead the church. That was Peter. So he knew Peter would have to deny him because they was going to run into Peter and say, I noticed you was with him. And he was like, no, he would have to. Now, even though it hurt Peter to do it, it really hurt it, but he understood he had to at that time. And you remember what Christ said once the cock crowed 3 times. He remembered it, and it hurt him, but he had to. Who was going to build the church? Who's going to finish it? Read.
35. Peter said unto him, Though I should die with thee, yet will I not deny thee. Likewise also said all the disciples.
Go ahead.
Then cometh Yeshua unto them, or with them, unto a place called Gethsemane, and saith unto the disciples, Sit ye here, while I go and pray yonder.
So he went to pray. Read.
And he took with him Peter and the 2 sons of Zebedee, and began to be sorrowful and very heavy. Then saith he unto them, My soul is exceeding sorrowful, even unto death. Tarry ye here, and watch with me. And he went a little further, and fell on his face, and prayed, saying, O my Father, if it be possible, let this cup pass from me.
Go ahead.
Nevertheless, not as I will, but as thou wilt. And he cometh unto the disciples, and findeth them asleep, and saith unto Peter, What? Could ye not watch with me 1 hour? Watch and pray, that ye enter not into temptation. The spirit indeed is willing, but the flesh is weak. He went away again the 2nd time, and prayed, saying, O my Father, if this cup may not pass away from me, except I drink it, thy will be done. And he came and found them asleep again, for their eyes were very heavy. And he left them and went again and prayed the third time, saying the same words. Then cometh he to his disciples and saith unto them, Sleep on now and take your rest. Behold, the hour is at hand.
The hour is at hand. And from that point on, those that were coming to take Christ was there. Right? So we're going to continue this going into the Passover tomorrow night before the feast. But before we do that, let me read that in Corinthians, the 5th chapter.
Come.
And then we'll have our feast.
1 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 1 Corinthians 5, verse 5. To deliver such an one unto Satan for the destruction of the flesh, that the spirit may be saved in the day of the Lord Yeshua. Your glorying is not good. Know ye not that a little leaven leaveneth the whole lump?
Do you know not a little leaven leaveneth the whole lump? Read.
Purge out therefore the old leaven, that ye may be a new lump.
Okay, so in the Old Testament, the reason for unleavened is because we left in haste, but it signifies something greater. It signified that we wouldn't have something that influenced us, like leaven influences bread, or when leaven gets in something, it a little bit changes the whole thing. So that's what sin does in us. When sin is introduced, it could be something small, but it affects the rest of our lives. It affects the whole thing. So that unleavened was really representing how we need to be under Christ and still be fed. Okay? Of course, bread is good and cake is good and cookie is good and all the stuff that leaven does, but you can be nourished without it and not have no influence. You can still be nourished through the Spirit and not have those things that lead to sin. You understand? You can. It's the thing where that the insatiable appetite, or the things that happened with our father Adam, that seed that was in us. Christ had to undo that. That's why he says we must become unleavened. We have to be like we was. We still had nourishment. We have to be a new lump for Christ, unleavened. So that's what it represents in the New Testament, in the New Covenant, right?
Come.
Read.
Purge out therefore the old leaven.
Purge out the old leaven. It's speaking of what we was under, also under the old covenant. Read.
That ye may be a new lump, as ye are unleavened. For even Christ our Passover
Christ our Passover
is sacrificed for us.
Is sacrificed for us. So when was Christ sacrificed? At the end of the Passover. Christ our Passover was sacrificed for us. Are you following this? Christ was sacrificed at the end of the Passover day. Okay. Read.
Verse 8. Therefore let us keep the feast.
Therefore let us keep the feast, and that's why even though the Feast of Unleavened Bread don't start until sundown tomorrow, according to the scriptures, we see the disciples keeping the feast with the communion without leaven. You see that? Read.
Therefore let us keep the feast.
Keep the feast.
Not with old leaven.
Not the old way.
Neither with the leaven of malice and wickedness.
Why? Because that's what was in Judas's heart. Malice and wickedness, having a bad feelings about other people. That's the key thing. It doesn't matter. And I see sometimes we get focused so much on the letter and what's right or wrong according to the letter. Well, the Bible doesn't matter to any degree in what it say if we don't feel right about each other. The Most High gave us the scriptures so that we can love each other. That's what it was all about. So it had nothing to do. Everyone look at the scriptures and how much you know and how you put scriptures together and all that as the as the pinnacle of what should be, when really it's about how we are towards each other. That's the key part of the scriptures. That's what it's about. So he says you can keep the feast So even if we kept it according to the letter, the perfect time and everything else, what difference would it make if we got hatred and malice and contention? What good would it be? If we feel in a certain type of way about other people, and what good is it? So it doesn't matter to some degree, the time and all that, if you're going to have malice against your brother. You out of time anyway. If you got malice and feel some type of way about somebody else. You understand? So what the Most High wants us to look at is how he wants to look at our spirit and how we are. And what are we letting affect us negatively? To sit at a table with brothers and sisters and have a problem with them is a problem. That's the problem. So he's given that example paralleling who? Judas. Judas had a problem with Christ. Now, that problem actually came out during the time that this woman came with the oil. But there was a seed in Judas before that. This thing was building. And that happened between us. We'll tolerate stuff and look at stuff and don't forgive stuff. And we'll build an account against a brother or sister. As if something is not wrong with us. And I hear it all the time how someone may look at something and be like, well, I thought this was Christ, but I'm seeing this, and this, and I don't know if this is right. Okay. You don't know if it's right. I don't know if you're right. Because why? How can you sit and look at something and judge it and look at it and see it wrong and build an account and not have no positive effect on it or try to change it? It's wrong. The worst thing people can do is sit around and just talk about what they think is wrong. When if you see what's wrong, it's on you to fix it. It's on you to bring it to the forefront to correct it. Or you can be like Judas. Hey, this ain't Christ. Look at it. They're doing this and he's doing that. I don't know. I'm just going to be in the spirit. I'm just going to be in the scriptures. If you was in the scriptures, you wouldn't be spreading your nonsense. If you feel a certain type of way about something, if you're not going to go the right way with it, then keep it to yourself. If it's not doing better or make it better, keep it to yourself. Don't spread it so that now somebody else will say, yeah, I've been noticing that too. Now you got two heretical jokers looking to stir something up. That's how it happens. And eventually the church continues and the work continues. And these two people who thought they knew everything is just left somewhere. With no gathering, no body. They just separated themselves because of what they thought was wrong. That's what happens. That's the spirit of Judas. And I'm not saying that a person, when they see something wrong, that they shouldn't say anything, but do it through the proper channels. Go correct it with the people you can correct it with. Instead of spreading madness and causing division. Right?
Come. Let me just finish up.
Yes, sir.
Verse 8. Therefore let us keep the feast.
Keep the feast.
Not with old leaven.
Not with old leaven.
Neither with the leaven of malice and wickedness.
Go ahead.
But with the unleavened bread of sincerity and truth.
Sincerity and truth. Read.
That's it.
Being true. What was the proper way for Judas to deal with that? I'm going to give that as an example.
Go straight to Christ.
He should have waited till everybody was gone, supported Christ in what Christ was doing because he didn't understand it, and sat down with Christ and had a meeting with Christ and say, well, listen. And Christ would have taught him and gave him understanding. But he was looking for an opportunity to do what? Grandstand. He should have. How many times Christ dealt with something the disciples didn't understand? And then in private, he'll go break it down to them. You understand? But no, he look at this. Oh, now I can show my spirit what I'm dealing with, how much knowledge I got, how much charity I have. And that's what happens. We look at a scenario and we judge it wrong. And we use that as a wedge between our brethren. Like I said, if we feel a certain type of way about each other, then the scriptures are void. The Most High gave us the scriptures so that we wouldn't have malice or hatred, so that we could care about each other. That's what he gave us the scriptures for. Okay? For learning, for self-examination, for correction. And he gave us the scriptures so that we can deal with issues before malice and content develops. Because it doesn't matter how right you are now. You're in the spirit of Satan now that you have contention and strife. It doesn't matter how right you may see things.
Just one thing I want to read on that.
Yes.
Matthew 22:35.
Go ahead.
Then one of them, which was a lawyer, asked him a question, tempting him and saying, Master, which is the great commandment in the law?
Which is the great commandment in the law? Now, when it says tempting him, this was a question being asked facetiously. This wasn't, he didn't ask the question to actually get an answer in earnest. He already knew the answer according to his education. So now he's coming to Christ. Okay, so read that part again, lawyer.
Then one of them, which was a lawyer, asked him a question, tempting him and saying, Master, which is the great commandment in the law?
What is the great commandment in the law? Now, you know, as a lawyer, he's educated. He think he got it going on. He think he know the law back and forth. People actually go to him about the law. What's the greatest law? What did Christ say?
37. Yeshua said unto him, Thou shalt love the Lord with all thy heart, and with all thy soul, and with all thy mind.
Read it again.
Thou shalt love the Lord with all thy heart.
Love the Most High with all thine heart.
And with all thy soul, and with all thy mind.
Go ahead.
This is the first and great commandment. And the second is like unto it. Thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. On these two commandments hang all the law and the prophets.
With these two commandments hang what? All the law and the prophets. It doesn't matter what we're following according to the law and whether or not we're on the letter and the time schedule. It does matter if you're in the spirit. But if you have all these things right and you feel some type of way and you feeling hatred and malice and contention, these things mean nothing. So what we're going to do tomorrow night, we're going to go into the Passover feast. And we'll talk about the Passover and Christ's sacrifice tomorrow night. So that's our communion. And let's say a prayer, then let's eat. Someone asked in Mark 14, 12, and 25, isn't this scripture specific about the time that the disciples asked Christ about when to prepare the feast? Yes, it is specific. We read it earlier. But that feast was for him and the disciples. Christ had to fulfill the Old Testament sacrifice. Okay, and when you go, you just came in later. So do me a favor. Review this whole video that we've just posted. That will answer your question. All right. All right. Someone says you've been trying since August to enroll in the academy. Okay. It shouldn't be no issue. Send an email to gatheringas1, that's the number 1, at AOL.com, and we'll have you in the academy. That shouldn't be an issue at all. All right? And the only reason I keep stressing this thing about the travel, y'all getting the food warmed up? All right, good. The only reason I keep stressing this is because these people don't have no idea about some of those people that are in these other countries that are not a part of the church. Okay? You got people in Jordan and all that in different areas that are not even a part of the church, that's using the Gathering of Christ church name. Okay? And people and these people are against the church. You have people in remote countries reaching out on Facebook. Why? Not because they're looking to help you get out. A lot of them are dealing with financial issues and need somebody to bring some money to sustain them and housing to sustain them. So they're looking for new money out there. You don't know these people. And I've heard countless issues when it comes to you dealing with these people that are not with the church that went into another country. We have bad account after a bad account with this. So I'm just putting it out there so that we're on record. So that if anything happened to anyone, we have this document that we've warned people over and over again not to travel out. And these people I can understand the mother being concerned. A 20-something-year-old young girl leaving the country with a little baby. With no people to protect her. That's what her family should do. Her family should look out for him. And then I'm coming to find out this brother is running around with an alias name and all types of stuff going on. And I'm like, it's not good. So y'all just be warned. So we want to say thank you and bless you. We're going to deal with the feast, and we'll be dealing with the Passover. I didn't want to talk about this, but I had to put it out there because it may be another week before you again, because tomorrow is just going to be festivities and us dealing with the Feast of Unleavened Bread from the end of the Passover into the Feast of Unleavened Bread. With that, I'm going to say shalom and enjoy your feast.
Shalom.
You going to sing us some songs, young man? Yes, sir. All right. You sisters, you can sing songs too if you want. All right. Do 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 do. Do 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 do. Do 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 do. A star so bright, what does this mean? Is he the one that was foreseen? Born to Israel a king, but who is he? Revered through fear, they had to flee to protect this child of prodigy who was born in all humility. But who is he? I'm talking about a man, but more than a man. To unlock the mysteries he holds, the keys. I never understood how a man that stands for good could yet be a threat to her whole society. Now I see he came for us, the meek of the earth. Now I know he died for me. His spirit set me free. Lord, I know you died for us. A sacrifice for us. Came to release the prisoner. He died for us. Gave sight to the blind, laid hands and healed. One look in the wind and the waves to still. A man with passion they wanted to kill. Why did they? He was made to walk this long, long road, to bear this cross all alone. A king mocked with a crown of thorns. Lord, how could they? I'm talking about a man, but more than a man. The things that he did I couldn't do, Lord. I never thought I would, and I don't think I could get betrayed and say forgive them, for they know not what they do. Oh Lord, I know you came for us. The meek of the earth, now I know you died for me. Your spirit sets me free. Lord, I know you died for us. A sacrifice for us. Came to release the prisoner. You died for us. While standing by his side, they wept profusely. He was denied 3 times before the early morn. Oh Lord, while laid to rest, they guarded him securely. They came back 3 days later, and he was gone. Lord, I know you died for us. The meek of the earth, now I know you died for me. Your spirit set us free. Lord, I know you died for us. A sacrifice for us. Through your blood sacrifice, you made us free. Came to release the prisoner. You died for me. Yeah. Came to release the prisoner. Through your blood sacrifice, you made us free. Came to release the prisoner. You died for me. Thank you. All right.
What's this? Somebody's personal. What it looks like.
One moment. Okay, we're in Matthew 26, starting at 47. And we're going to read 7 verses each, okay?
God.
And while he spake to Judas, one of the 12 came. With him a great multitude with swords and staves from the chief priests and elders of the people. Now he that betrayed him gave them a sign, saying, Whosoever I shall kiss, the same is he. Hold fast. And forthwith he came to Yeshua, Jesus, and said, Hail, Master, and kissed him. And Yeshua, whom most called Jesus, said unto him, Friend, wherefore art thou come? Then came they and laid hands on Jesus, Yeshua, and took him. And behold, one of them which were with Yeshua stretched out his hand, and drew his sword, and struck a servant of the high priest, and smote off his ear. Then Yeshua said unto him, Put up again thy sword unto his place. For all they that take the sword shall perish with the sword. The 53rd verse. Thinkest thou that I cannot now pray to my Father, and he shall presently give me more than 12 legions of angels? So it wasn't about picking up the sword. Christ, he says, you don't have to defend me. Okay? I can pray to the Father right now, and 5 legions, which are thousands of angels, 12,000 angels will come in the presence to defend me. Right?
Come.
Go ahead, lawyer.
Matthew 26, verse 54.
7 verses, right?
Come. But how then shall the scriptures be fulfilled, that thus it must be? In that same hour said Yeshua to the multitudes, Are ye come out as thieves, or against as a thief with swords and staves, for to take me? I sat daily with you teaching in the temple, and ye laid no hold on me. But all this was done that the scriptures of the prophets might be fulfilled. Then all the disciples forsook him and fled. And they that had laid hold on Yeshua led him away to Caiaphas the high priest, where the scribes and the elders were assembled. But Peter followed him afar off unto the high priest's palace, and went in, and sat with the servants to see the end. Now the chief priests and elders and all the council sought false witness against Yeshua, to put him to death. But found none, yea, though many false witnesses came, yet found they none. At the last came 2 false witnesses.
Seven verses.
Matthew 26, verse 61.
Matthew 26 and 51, right?
61.
61.
61.
Okay, go ahead.
And said, This fellow said, I am able to destroy the temple of the Most High, and to build it in 3 days. And the high priest arose and said unto him, Answerest thou nothing? What is it which these witness against thee? But Yeshua held his peace. And the high priest answered and said unto him, I adjure thee by the living power that thou tell us whether thou be the Christ, the Son of the Most High. Yeshua saith unto him, Thou hast said, Nevertheless, I say unto you, hereafter shall you see the Son of Man sitting on the right hand of power, and coming in the clouds of heaven. Then the high priest rent his clothes, saying, He hath spoken blasphemy. What further need have we of witnesses? Behold, now ye have heard his blasphemy. What think ye? They answered and said, He is guilty of death. Then did they spit in his face and buffeted him, and others smote him with the palms of their hands, saying, Prophesy unto us, thou Christ, who is he that smote thee?
Verse 69. Now Peter sat without the palace, and the damsel came unto him, saying, Thou also was with Yeshua of Galilee. And he denied before all, saying, I know not what thou sayest. And when he was gone into the porch, another maid saw him, and said unto them, What were they? What that were there? This fellow was also with Yeshua of Nazareth. And again he denied with an oath, I did not know the man. And after a while came unto him they that stood by, and said to Peter, Surely thou also art one of them, for thy speech betrayed thee. Then began he to curse and to swear, saying, I know not the man. And immediately the cock crew. And Peter remembered the word of Yeshua, which said unto him before the cock crew, Thou shalt deny me thrice, and went out and wept bitterly.
The next verse too, right? One more verse. 27 and 1. Yeah, 27 and 1.
Matthew chapter 27, verse 1. When the morning was come, all the chief priests and elders of the people took counsel against Yeshua to put him to death.
Give it to Yahweh. Yeah, you can go around this way. That's God. That's fine. Go ahead. 7 verses there.
And when they had bound him, they led him away and delivered him to Pontius
Pilate.
the governor. Then Judas, which had been betrayed him, when he saw that he was condemned, repented himself and brought again the 30 pieces of silver to the chief priests and elders, saying, I have sinned in that I have betrayed the innocent blood. And they said, What is that to us? See thou to that. And he had cast down the pieces of silver in the temple, and departed, and went and hanged himself. And the chief priest took the silver pieces and said, It is not lawful to put them into the treasury, because it is the price of blood. And they took counsel, and brought with them the potter's field to bury strangers in. Wherefore that field was called the field of blood unto this day.
One more. Okay, that's 8, right? Okay.
Verse 9. Then were fulfilled that which was spoken by Jeremy the prophet, saying, And they took the 30 pieces of silver, the price of him that was valued, whom they of the children of Israel did value. And they gave them for the potter's field as the Lord appointed them. And Yeshua stood before the governor, and the governor asked him, saying, Art thou the king of the Jews? And Yeshua said unto him, Thou sayest. And when he was accused of the chief priests and elders, he answered nothing. Then said Pilate unto him, Hearest thou not how many things they witness against thee? And he answered them to never a word, insomuch that the governor marveled greatly. Now at that feast the governor was wont to release unto the people a prisoner whom they would, and they had then a notable prisoner called Barabbas. Therefore when they were gathered together, Pilate said unto them, Whom will ye that I release unto you, Barabbas or Yeshua, which is called Christ?
7 verses.
Matthew
Chapter.
It's 20. That's 27, 19 through 26.
27, verse 18. For he knew for envy they had delivered him. When he was sat down on the judgment seat, his wife sent unto him, saying, Have thou nothing to do with that just man? For I have suffered many things this day in a dream because of him. But the chief priests and elders persuaded the multitude that they should act Barabbas and destroy Christ. The governor answered and said unto them, Whether of the twine will ye that I release unto you? They said, Barabbas. Pilate said unto them, What shall I do then with Yeshua, which is called Christ? They all say unto him, Let him be crucified. And the governor said, Why, what evil hath he done? But they cried out the more, saying, Let him be crucified. When Pilate saw that he could prevail nothing,
Pilate. When Pilate saw
that he could prevail nothing, but rather a atonement was made, he took water and washed his hands before the multitude, saying, I am innocent of the blood of this person. See it to it. Then answered all the people and said, His blood be on us and on our children.
You at 26, right?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Verse 26.
Then released he Barabbas unto them. And when he had scourged Yeshua, he delivered him to be crucified. 27. Then the soldiers of the governor took Yeshua into the common hall, and gathered unto him the whole band of soldiers. And they stripped him and put on him a scarlet robe. Verse 29. When he had plaited a crown, when he had plaited a crown of thorns, he put it upon his head, and a reed in his right hand, and he bowed the knee before him, and mocked him, saying, Hail, King of the Jews. Verse 30. And they spit upon him, and took the reed and smote him on the head. 31. And after that they had mocked him, they took the robe off from him, and put his own raiment on him, and led him away to crucify him. 32. And as they came out, they found a man of Cyrene, Simon by name, him they compelled to bear his cross. 33. And when they were come unto a place called Golgotha, that is to say, the place of his fall, they gave him vinegar to drink, mingled with gall. But when he had tasted thereof, he would not drink. In verse 35, he said.
Go ahead, do one more.
Verse 35. And they crucified him and parted his garments, casting lots, that it might be fulfilled which was spoken by the prophet. They parted my garments among them, and upon my vesture did they cast lots.
Okay. Go ahead, Malak.
Verse 36. And sitting down, they watched him there, and set up over his head his accusation written, This is Yeshua, the King of the Jews. Then were there two thieves crucified with him, one on the right hand and the other on the left. And they passed by, reviled him, wagging their heads, and saying, Thou that destroyest the temple and buildest it in 3 days, save thyself. If thou be the Son of the Most High, come down from the cross. Likewise, also the chief priests mocking him, with the scribes and elders said, He saved others, himself he cannot save. If he be the King of Israel, let him now come down from the cross, and we will believe him. He trusted in the Most High, let him deliver him now, if he will have him. For he said, I am the Son of the Most High.
Verse 44. The thieves also, which were crucified with him, cast the same in his teeth. Now from the 6th hour there was darkness over all the land until the 9th hour. And about the 9th hour, Yeshua cried with a loud voice, saying, Eli, Eli, Lama
Sabachthani.
Sabachthani. That is to say, my power, why have thou forsaken me? Verse 47. Some of them that stood there, when they heard that, said, This man calleth for Elias, and straightway one of them ran and took a sponge and filled it with vinegar and put it on a reed and gave it him to drink. Verse 49. And the rest said, Let us see whether Elias will come to save him. And Yeshua, when he had cried again with a loud voice, yielded up the ghost. Verse 51. And behold, the veil of the temple was rent in twain from the top to the bottom, and the earth did quake, and the rocks rent, and the graves were open, and many bodies of the saints which slept arose, and came out of the graves after his resurrection, and he went into the holy city and appeared unto many. Now when the centurion and that they were with him watching Yeshua saw the earthquake and those things that were done, they feared greatly, saying, Truly this was the Son of the Most High. And many women were there, beholding afar off, which followed Yeshua from Galilee, ministering unto him, among which was Mary Magdalene, and Mary the mother of James, and Joseph, and the mother of Zebedee's children. When the even was come, there came a rich man from Arimathea,
Arimathea.
named Joseph, which also himself was Yeshua's disciple. He went to Pilate and begged the body of Yeshua. Then Pilate commanded the body to be delivered. And when Joseph had taken the body, he wrapped it in a clean linen cloth and laid it in his own new tomb, which he had hewn out in the rock. And he rolled a great stone over the door of the sepulchre and departed. And there was Mary Magdalene and the other Mary sitting over against the sepulchre. Now the next day that followed the day of the preparation, the chief priests and the Pharisees came together unto Pilate, saying, Sir, we remember that the deceiver said, while he was yet alive, after 3 days, I will arise again. Command therefore that the sepulchre be made sure unto the 3rd day, lest his disciples come by night and steal him away, and say unto the people, He is risen from the dead. So the last error shall be worse than the first. Pilate said unto them, Ye have a watch, and go your way. Make it as sure as ye can. So they went and made the sepulchre sure, sealing the stone and setting a watch.
Matthew 28 and 1. And at the end of the Sabbath, as it began to dawn toward the first day of the week, came Mary Magdalene and the other Mary to see the sepulchre. We know this is talking about between Sabbaths when you look at the Greek. And behold, there was a great earthquake, for the angel of the Lord descended from heaven and came and rolled back the stone from the door and sat upon it. His countenance was like lightning, and his raiment was as white as snow. And for fear of him, the keepers did shake and became as dead men. And the angel answered and said unto the woman, Fear not ye, for I know that ye seek Yeshua which was crucified. He is not here, for he is risen. And as he said, come see the place where the Lord lay. Let's go to Corinthians 5. We're going into Corinthians 5. We're just going to do bread and wine real quick and prepare for the feast. Now, it's important we read that to understand what he went through on the Passover. I know we go into the Passover of Moses and how our people were delivered. But now we must remember how Christ fulfilled the Passover, because that was actually a similitude to what Christ would fulfill for us going forward. This prepared the new kingdom, and as we see, the temple was rent in two. Now that the temple was rent in two after Christ's crucifixion, Christ broke the temple. When he began, once he died, he began his fight into the realm of darkness, and he began to fight in realms. And the temple was destroyed. The temple is where the Pharisees and scribes gained their power over us. So Christ destroyed that temple, and no more could anyone get to the Father through the old way going forward. So the only people that will go into Christ's kingdom or receive his temple will be those who are washed clean and walk in the Spirit of Christ going forward. So the Bible says that the law was our schoolmaster to bring us to Christ. Yes, we follow the law and look to the law, but that's just the beginning. It's now no longer through the temple. It's through Christ now, and that's one thing the Christian churches have right. So when they see us talk about the law, and don't see the Spirit of Christ, it confuses them. Because what good is the law if we don't treat each other right and follow Christ? The law was made so that we could follow Christ and make it to the new kingdom that's coming into this earth. And that's what the Gathering of Christ Church is preparing for. Right? Now let's read the communion scripture in Corinthians 5, and let's drink bread and wine. 1 Corinthians, yeah. 1 Corinthians 11, yeah, excuse me. Corinthians 5 is in my mind from last night. And then after that, I'm going to actually do a hymn like was done on Passover night. And then we're going to prepare. We're going to have some food. We're going to have drink. We're going to have rapayala. We're going to have the brothers. Anything y'all want to sing after the food, we're going to have a full celebration to the Most High. And if it's something you want to say in your dedication to the Most High and express what the Most High means to you, there's no better night than tonight. Where are we, lawyer? Okay, 17th verse, right? I'm at 1 Corinthians 11. We're going to start at 17. Now in this that I declare unto you, I praise ye not, that ye come together, not for the better, but for the worse. Now, when he says we come together not for the better, but the worse, that's what Paul was saying, because usually people like to come together when everything is fine and they feel everything is in the spirit and all that. But sometimes you have to come together even when you feel in a certain type of way. Because that's the healing that begins when two or more gather together, and Satan is trying to keep us away from each other. So don't come together just because everything is good. Come together when things are not right, when you're feeling low, when you're feeling down. Still come together. Don't care about that, because Satan wants to keep you alone, to mess with your mind and have you question your walk. Right? I'm in the 18th verse. But first of all, when you come together in the church, I hear that there be divisions among you, and I partly believe it. For there must be also heresies among you. So in a church, you're going to always have division or heresies, because that's how the Most High try the people in the church, to see who's going to sustain the storm, who's going to weather the storm and get through these things. For there must be also heresies among you, that they which are approved may be made manifest among you. When you come together, therefore, into one place, this is not to eat the Lord's Supper, for in eating everyone taketh before other his own supper, and one is hungry and another is drunken. So to let you know, it's not a party. I know some people, and that's why Paul was writing this in Corinthians, because some people, Hebrews, would go to Passover for a party. They would go to drink and get drunk, and they look no different than the world when they came together. Vomiting and driving drunk and all that. The Passover is not for that. And these are the things that happen. And Paul was, and it's nothing new. It happened during the time of Paul. People would come together for the party. And then forget, don't even read why they're actually at the ceremony. It's because of what Christ did for us, what he went through, being spit on, given gall, which is urine, and vinegar to drink, being beat. You understand? These are the things you must remember that was done against a total innocent man, and knew that he had the power to call the angels to destroy the Roman Empire all at once, and took it for all of us. That's what we should be coming together for. Remember that our problems are not that deep compared to what Christ went through for us. And our issues are not that deep. So it says here, 22. What? Have ye not houses to eat and to drink in? Or despise ye the church of the Most High, and shame them that have not? What shall I say to you? Shall I praise you in this? I praise you not. For I have received of the Most High, of Yeshua, that which also I delivered unto you, that Yeshua, the same night in which he was betrayed, took bread, and when he had given thanks, the Wala Ahaya, he broke it and said, take, eat. This is my body, which is broken for you. This do in remembrance of me. Let's get some bread. Thank you. You got your wine? Go. After the same manner also, he took the cup which he had supped, saying, this is the New Testament in my blood. This do ye, as often as you drink it, in remembrance of me. For as often as ye eat this bread and drink this cup, ye do show the Lord death till he come. Wherefore, whosoever shall eat the bread and drink this cup of the Most High unworthily shall be guilty of the body and blood of the Lord. Now, why does it say that based on what we broke down last night? Because Judas ate that bread and drunk that cup unworthily. He had hatred and venom and malice in his heart with his brothers on a holy night. He should have settled those things before the communion. And that's why from communion to communion, you're going to have issues. That's why Paul said, why don't come together just for the good, but for the worse. But it's our job to make sure Judas is not in us from communion to communion. Okay? That something or an offense done happen. We have to examine ourselves to make sure we're not feeling a certain type of way before we sup with our brothers, because that's what it's talking about. You handle your issues, and then you come in peace on the Most High's day, so his day can be peace. Right? But let a man examine himself, and so let him eat that bread and drink of that cup. For he that eateth and drinketh unworthily, eateth and drinketh damnation to himself, not discerning the Lord's body. For this cause many are weak and sickly among you, and many sleep. For if we would judge ourselves, we should not be judged. But when we are judged, we are chastened of the Lord, that we should not be condemned with the Lord. So when there is sicknesses, that's showing that it should be some level of examination amongst all of us. Wherefore, my brethren, when you come together to eat, tarry one for another. That means wait, because sometimes we're late. So that's what it means, tarry one for another. Because some people are like, man, we should have been here. But we have to wait for our brothers and sisters because sometimes we're late.
Sometimes, well, the majority of the time we're late, right? But that's why Paul was saying in scriptures, wait for your brother or sister. Sometimes people be straggling along and because I don't even know if I want to, so that's what was going on. Oh my goodness, I wonder, some people wonder, am I dressed right or whatever the case is. But the Bible says we must wait for our brothers, tarry for them, wait for them. As if this was us. When Paul said, to wait for your people, who's always late? That's Israel, right? It says, tarry one for another. And if any man hunger, let him eat at home. So that means don't come here strictly for the meal, because it's not about that. We have a regular meal and festivities on our own. Even though we're going to have a good time, we must keep focused that this is when Christ was crucified. You understand? We have to keep that focus and use that as momentum throughout the year. So when the Most High gave us the schedules for the Sabbaths and all that, and when Christ was crucified, as you can see when it gets dark, this is when Christ gave up the ghost and began his battle against another realm. To the point darkness came on the earth, and Rome was dark for 3 days straight. It was total darkness and no light, no sun in Rome. For 3 days, Christ was actually going into hell, taking the power and keys so that he could release the souls. Before he died, he said, Father, Father, why have thou forsaken me? A lot of people thought that he was defeated. He knew that Satan was lurking in the realm, listening to him, and he thought that Christ gave up. Went into Hades and told hell to prepare to keep him. So that's why he said that. Satan went into hell and said, Hades, we can keep him here. If we bound him here, I'll keep the power of this earth and this realm. And no sooner as Satan went down there, Christ got full power in a place where there's no space or time, and broke the temple and began to destroy in full power in a different realm. And that's why the temple split in two. And everybody looked around and they were scared. An earthquake happened. Christ got full power at that moment. He was in his total spirit. So when I see Christians look at Christ as if he's dead and showing a Cesar Borgia all bloodied up, that's not the Christ we're talking about. Christ had full power once he left this shell and began to fight demons and fallen angels in another realm and took full power. Then he went down into hell and preached to the souls there, telling them what he's going to do to them at the end of his realm once he gets power. And then told the righteous in the bosom of Abraham, prepare yourself. I'm going to release you. You understand? I'm going to release you for your righteousness. And took full, and Hades itself is a spirit. And he told Hades, I have the keys, I have the power. Okay? And I'm going to totally command you to release souls when it's time. And the proof of that, what happened? The dead came up to the earth to show you he had the power of hell, because the dead